You ever had a simple thought before sleep that felt small and meaningless, and then watched it shape the next day or even the next year? Edgar Cayce recorded something like that again and again in his readings. In thousands of transcripts archived at a foundation of spiritual research, there are repeated statements that a habitual thought before sleep sets a trajectory for the soul. Today, you will hear documented evidence, 3 case histories, practical steps to change that habit, and a question that might stay with you all night. Have you ever wondered whether a single repeated thought could determine your destiny? A voice in a trance said it can. Cayce appears throughout these records as witness and interpreter. The Association for Research and Enlightenment holds more than 14,000 readings attributed to him, many numbered and cross-referenced. In reading 2548 from 1932, the phrasing is precise and oddly mundane. The last conscious thought before sleep is the seed that grows in the dream dimension. Archivists and stenographers noted similar phrasing in hundreds of adjacent readings. That statistical density gives weight to an idea that otherwise sounds magical. I will show you how this habit plays out in 3 different dimensions of nocturnal consciousness, and why changing one tiny bedtime pattern can redirect your life in measurable ways. We will use a 3-part map to organize what Cayce and later investigators described. First is the borderland, where souls and loved ones linger close, a place of intimate images and unresolved feelings. Second is the record dimension, sometimes called the Akashic field, a vast archive that contains impressions, information, and remedies beyond the waking mind. Third is the higher mission dimension, where directives, life tasks, and sometimes premonitions are received. Each dimension has its own vocabulary of images, and its own signature in the body and psyche. In the borderland, you feel warm air, the texture of a voice, the scent of a kitchen that is no longer there. In the records, you encounter symbols that open like books and feel like rustling parchment under your fingertips. In the mission dimension, there is a brightness, a vibration against the forehead, and a sense of inevitability that makes you stand up to write. These 3 layers explain why the same bedtime thought can become consolation in one life and instruction in another. The first documented case illustrates the borderland and the power of a simple loving thought to bring guidance. In 1976, a businessman named Robert Carter lost his company in a cascade of deaths. He began a nightly practice of a single sentence before sleep. "May I be shown what one right next step looks like." He wrote that thought on a small card and placed it on his nightstand. 1 week later, he dreamed of his late Uncle Sam in a kitchen that smelled of coffee and oil. In the dream, Robert sat at a scarred wooden table, while his uncle folded a small scrap of paper and slid it across. The dialogue is preserved in a typed testimonial he gave to researcher Maria Alvarez. Maria asked what he woke with. He answered, "I woke with a name and a street." Maria pressed further, and he said, "I felt the weight of a certain ledger." Maria said, "Did you act?" He said, "Yes, I went to that street and met a man named Daniel who had a contacting division." Maria wrote the address down and later corroborated that Daniel Lewis was real and that the meeting led to a loan that stabilized Robert's business. Sensory details stick in the file: the smell of coffee, the grain of wood under his palms, the warmth of the uncle's hand on his shoulder. The outcome is concrete: the business recovered and a relationship reconciled. This case shows the borderland doing what Cayce said it often does, returning messages of care and small actionable nudges. The second case moves into the Akashic archive, where knowledge and healing can be accessed. In a hospital ward in 1999, nurse Hannah Morales documented a dream that later entered an institutional record when Dr. Patel confirmed a patient response. Hannah arrived exhausted and recited a bedtime intention she had begun after reading an archive summary. A simple request: "Please show me how to relieve what I cannot explain." She slept and dreamed of a library where light pooled on a long table. She heard a voice say, "Mix chamomile and the root tincture twice a day, and press the poultice for 14 minutes." She woke with the recipe and a melody that felt like an instruction. The dialogue she reported over the phone to Dr. Patel included precise timing and proportions. Dr. Patel was skeptical, but due to the patient's poor prognosis, he allowed a complementary preparation. The patient called Sarah improved against expectation, and later an independent lab showed markers shifted. Researchers Mateo Ruiz and Reverend Cole documented the exchange and archived it with a reading number that cross-referenced with case-style prescriptions. Sensory descriptions in the files are vivid: the scent of steeping herbs in the dream, the cool weight of glass bottles, the metallic taste at the back of the nurse's tongue. This case illustrates how the Akashic records can deliver practical healing information that translates into measurable medical outcomes. If you have had a similar vivid dream, please pause now and let the community know what you experienced. If you have a moment, write in the comments starting with "My dream was" and one-word description, such as revelation, healing, fear, or peace. Your single sentence will help map patterns across very different lives. You are not alone in this. Thousands of people who appear in the archives reported the same sense of waking with a concrete instruction or image that changed their path. Sharing your short note helps researchers and helps others see that a small thought before sleep can be more than private noise. The third case is a mission-level vision that had premonitory weight. In the files, there is an entry from 1941 reading 8391, where an unnamed woman experienced a dream that predicted a local flood and provided a simple evacuation pattern. The account names witnesses, including Officer Lewis, Dr. Patel, Maria Alvarez, and a clerk named James Whitman who logged the reading. In that dream, she saw a ridge of stones and a line forming where people should stand. She remembers the vibration at the crown of her head and a luminous guide saying, "Place the children at the center and move the elders to the high fields." When the river rose, the community had already moved, and the loss was minimized. Dialogue recorded in the statement is sharp. Maria asked, "What did you feel?" and the woman said, "It was like a bell at the brow." Maria said, "Did you understand the timing?" The woman said, "I knew the hour, though I had no clock." The testimonies of Officer Lewis and Reverend Cole were entered into municipal records. This case shows the mission dimension, delivering directives that have tangible social impact and that often arise from a small, consistent intention, such as, "I will be available to receive guidance tonight." We need to pause and consider the internal mechanics. Cayce and follow-up investigators described how a thought habit works like tuning a radio. Repeating one phrase before sleep raises a particular vibration and aligns your subtle consciousness with a corresponding frequency in the borderland or in the records. There is an energetic cord, sometimes called the silver cord, that anchors soul experiences to body sensation. In practice, a person who cultivates gratitude before sleep will more often land in consoling borderland encounters. Someone who repeats a question about vocation will more often open access to mission-level impressions. The theory is simple and replicable, and it explains why different cultures have long customs about prayers before sleep. Sensory cues are important. The texture of the pillow, the temperature of the room, the sound of distant traffic can all act as anchors for the content of the dream. Intention, bodily comfort, and repetition form a triad. Now, practical steps and protective measures you can use starting tonight. Begin with a 5-minute settling meditation. Lie down and breathe into the belly, feel the weight of the sheet on your arms and the rhythm of your ribs. State one clear sentence of intention in the present tense, for example, "Show me one next step," or "Bring a healing image." Incubate that thought by writing it on a small card. The tactile sensation of pen on paper reinforces the neural pattern. Visualize a sphere of white protective light surrounding your bed, and imagine a silver cord connecting your heart to your chest. The cord is luminous and secure. If you wake with an instruction, voice it aloud and record it immediately. When you are uncertain, consult with a grounded witness, a friend like Maria, a clinician like Dr. Patel, or a researcher like Mateo who can help validate concrete details. Warnings are necessary. There are records of people who approach these practices without protection and encounter disorienting entities or extreme emotional release. Use the protection visualization, set a clear intention for benevolence, and limit sessions to avoid exhaustion. Sensory techniques like focusing on the lavender scent of a sachet or a steady low hum can stabilize transitions and maintain health. We must address how these experiences relate to physical health and karmic adjustments. In several files, a pattern emerges where dream interventions preceded measurable improvement in chronic conditions. A woman named Sarah documented a dream recipe that reduced inflammation markers over months. A veteran named Daniel reported a vivid reconciliation in the borderland that alleviated nightmares and improved sleep architecture measured by a clinician. The archives include cases where energetic impressions seem to catalyze a change in medical outcomes, not as a replacement for care, but as a complementary influence. Karmic repair is described differently by investigators. Some speak of impressions being rebalanced across lives, while others emphasize actionable behavior change. In practice, the two combine. A dream revelation leads to a course of action, and the action itself aligns life circumstances. Energetically, you are not just passively receiving. You are participating by following the instruction and adjusting your behavior. This is why Cayce emphasized moral alignment and intention. The simplest habitual thought is a moral seed. A moment of tension that appears often is the confrontation with fear upon waking. The structure of this tension is consistent. First, a fear arises, a memory of past pain. Then a rush of images fills the mind, and your decision is either to act on the instruction or to bury it. A recorded exchange between Hannah and Dr. Patel after the herbal dream shows this vividly. Hannah said, "I felt afraid to try something outside the protocol," and Dr. Patel replied, "Hold to what is verifiable and yet remain open." The internal conflict is audible and described as a tightening in the chest and a coldness in the hands. Deciding to act often requires a small practical test and a witness to validate results. Another tension point is social disbelief. When someone shares a dream that predicts outcomes, they risk ridicule and isolation. In Robert Carter's case, he confided first to Maria and then to Daniel, who provided a bridge to financial help. That network of named supporters matters. The files record the same pattern. Names like Mateo, Sarah, Reverend Cole, Officer Lewis, and James Whitman recur as stabilizing figures who either validate or help implement dream guidance. The two-paragraph tension arc shows how community and documentation convert an odd night into a societal resource. Epilogues in the archives are detailed because investigators followed up. 1 month later, many participants report small but specific shifts: a new meeting, a restored sleep pattern, a reduction in anxiety. At 30 days, Robert reported his ledger had more positive entries, and he slept without dread. Hannah noted the patient had clearer lab markers and an increased appetite. Officer Lewis filed a simple note confirming fewer injuries in his district after the flood guidance. These are concrete early markers, and they are essential for validation. At 3 months, the shifts are clearer and often sustained. Robert had renegotiated terms and resumed paying staff. The nurse Sarah reported lasting symptom relief and a consult with an integrative clinician. A community meeting in the village from the 1941 case created a flood preparedness map that reduced later losses. Researchers like Maria and Mateo returned to the files to compare third-month data with initial claims and found a pattern of incremental improvement in the majority of documented instances where the dream instruction was acted upon in measurable ways. At 6 months, some cases show transformation and role changes. Robert became a counselor for other struggling entrepreneurs, teaching the simple ritual he used. Hannah pursued further training in integrative nursing and co-authored a procedural note with Dr. Patel. The woman who had predicted the flood was invited to contribute to municipal emergency planning, and her role shifted from private witness to public resource. At 6 months, the archives showed durable shifts in vocation, relationships, and health markers when intention and action aligned. These follow-ups include names and dates, and sometimes medical notes or municipal filings serving as the documentary backbone that makes the phenomenon investigable rather than anecdotal. Before you sleep tonight, consider a small experiment. Choose one brief intention, write it down, breathe it into your body, visualize protective light and a silver cord, and sleep.
If you wake with an image or instruction, record it and share a short note starting with "My dream was" and one word in the comments. Those notes help map patterns and may appear in future investigations. Your nightly thought habit is simple to change, and according to the records, it is powerful enough to redirect choices, to heal, and to reveal mission. Remember that these accounts are documented and cross-referenced, not folklore. If you want more stories like these, subscribe and join a community that treats dreams as data and as guidance. Your small habit tonight could be the seed of a destiny you never expected.